Before I get into the video, I wanted to provide pretty much a stripped down, too long, didn't watch, should I get this controller, yes, no, sort of introduction. To answer that question, if you were wanting specifically this kind of layout, wherein it's a traditional leverless layout, it doesn't have a hybrid WASD at the top, this is exactly what you're wanting. If you're wanting a hitbox but not willing to spend upwards of $250, this is what you're getting then, and it's at that price point a really solid product. The quality is still there, Sanwa buttons, very responsive. There's a few sort of quirks along the way in the form of USB-B connection and a few placeholder buttons that are sort of hybridized among all the other models in the Fightbox line. So it's sort of this one-size-fits-all sort of product, if that makes sense. It's a little odd, but again, it's more of a quirk. But all that to say, if you're considering a Hitbox-inspired controller, this is an excellent choice. The Fightbox F10-EX makes a strong case for its place in the ever-growing leverless market, even alongside popular value contemporaries like Hot 42's M and T series controllers. Starting at $99.99 at the time of recording, it sets itself apart with the use of Sanwa buttons and a fairly robust build quality. The price quickly increases for other platforms, however, with the universal version being $229.99. While there are a few complaints I have with this controller, they're all virtually nullified when keeping the price point in mind. Before getting into my full thoughts on this controller, you should know this feedback is coming from a player of intensely average skill, as I'm sure you can already tell in the gameplay shown. I'm a battle roller with Paul in Tekken 8, which from the last published rank distribution is slightly above average, but since then I'm sure it's more in the average range. I do see this as being important because while there is a ton of value to get from listening to professionals like F10-EX explain the limits and minutiae of your options, this is a more candid and informal experience that is very likely to be more similar to your own if you're picking up a leverless controller for the first time. If looking at controllers in this price range, you're probably not getting ready for the next international tournament and are instead looking for a controller that has intrigued you and you're feeling out options in a layout that is brand new to you. The layout of the F10-EX is a more traditional leverless design with 3 supplemental white buttons, 2 flanking the default up button, and 1 placed directly above your square equivalent on a PlayStation controller. This layout gives a good framework for the leverless experience while also giving you a few extra buttons to customize. The controller follows hitbox conventions further by defaulting SOCD to having up priority, meaning left and right inputs will cancel, however up inputs will override down inputs. With Tekken being my primary fighting game, this isn't very intuitive to me personally, however there is a very quick hotkey entry noted in the provided manual to reset to a true neutral SOCD. 3 buttons are on the sides of the controller with Home and Mode, or Share on the PlayStation variant, on top, and Start on the right, or Options and Home on the PlayStation variant. These buttons are not specifically noted to be Sanwa buttons, however they're serviceable all the same. What is odd here, however, is the rubber placeholder buttons that are installed in places where there can be buttons. These are a little odd in my eyes, and I would much prefer that this just be simply solid plastic. This makes more sense seeing as the F-Series on Fightbox's website, all with very similar builds, are over a dozen in number with mostly slight differences in layout. I can only guess this is a cost-saving measure. Further, the provided manual seems to treat the F-Series as a catch-all in its illustrations and instructions. While again, the layouts are quite similar and you'll still be able to get to the answer you need, it doesn't make it as immediately understandable and simple as it could be. The controller is connected via USB-A to USB-B. While there's an included cable with this controller, the use of USB-B will surely mean users will not have many replacement cables lying around relative to the more common USB-C cables. The hitbox style size gives you plenty of real estate to rest your wrist and hands while in use. Coming from a DualSense PlayStation 5 controller, there is little to no fatigue or cramping, when using leverless controllers, which is a huge plus in and of itself. In spite of the controller's size, I found it a little on the lightweight side. This, coupled with the controller's less than stellar non-slip pads, mean the controller will quite easily slide on desk surfaces unless potentially placed on a mat or similar. With this in mind, I would recommend playing with the F10-EX on your lap. When considering if you want to experiment with the use of leverless controllers, and especially if you're coming from a gamepad like the DualSense, the F10-EX is a strong and safe choice in the traditional design. However, if you're a PC user, you may want to find a layout that is more in line with WASD motion, like Fightbox's own F2 or Hot42's M16. This layout is much more intuitive coming from keyboard and mouse in my experience. Found that the traditional Hitbox layout, it's a bit more cumbersome, specifically in regard to up left, up, or up right inputs, and the Fightbox is no exception. I can't even begin to comprehend a 360-degree directional input here. If on PC and looking for a traditional leverless design, the $100 price tag makes this controller extremely appealing, and I don't think you can go wrong with picking this to explore leverless options. However, if needing this for PlayStation 5 specifically, wherein you can expect to pay $199.99 or $229.99 for the universal variant, I can only comfortably recommend this controller if you're steadfast and specifically wanting a Hitbox style controller and wanting to save wherever you can. If on PlayStation 5 and not PC, however, I would personally recommend going for a Hot42 option, as there is a USB port to plug in a Brooks adapter to allow for PlayStation 5 play at a significantly cheaper price even with the adapter in mind.